Most note-taking systems don't function with how the brain actually naturally wants to operate. The great minds from the past would draw diagrams like the Renaissance thinkers, Da Vinci, people in the past like Newton, Einstein. They would work in diagrams and have visual elements to their note-taking and ideation. In this video, we're going to discuss a powerful form of note-taking called mind mapping. We're going to discuss what is it, how do we do it, and why is it so effective. Now, what is a mind map? A mind map is basically where you have a main idea in the middle, ideally a picture or just a couple words of what you're going to be discussing. And then you move out and you branch out with different ideas that you draw onto this web of connections, and you go from more general, the main idea, and then sub-main ideas to more specific and details. You have all these details that are radiating outwards, and at the end you have this web of ideas that's all connected that you can visualize and see all at once. A dense form of note-taking, where something that might take you 10 pages, you can easily see on one single page and see how all the ideas are connected together. It's a very powerful way of thinking and taking notes. And yeah, I really have been getting so much value out of using mind maps. By creating this video, I used a mind map that's been very helpful for me in breaking down the separate parts of mind mapping. Now, what are its uses? It's really good for notes, project management, ideation, planning, and memorizing. Why should we use it? First of all, it's fun. Working in this nonlinear fashion where you're drawing out ideas from the main idea just adds this element of, oh, that was actually an enjoyable experience. I want to create more of these. And you see your final product of a mind map, and it's this really cool, interesting looking thing. And just the process, for whatever reason, is really playful, personalized, and creative. Next, it replicates how the brain actually works. The brain works in a less linear way than you might imagine, and actually works more off of association. One idea sparks another idea. One word just creates images within your brain that maybe you weren't expecting, and it's not a linear thing. Everything is based off of associations, and even if you see the shapes and the networks of the cells in your brain, you realize that it's this interconnected network of ideas branching and connecting and communicating with each other, and this is how mind maps work as well. Next, it's really easy to visualize. I can look at a page of something that I mind mapped out, and in a short amount of time, instead of looking for the right words, I can visualize how everything's connected together, and in just a moment, I can look for, okay, what's the idea that I'm looking for? Okay, how are these other sub-ideas connected to it? And in just an instant, because it's so visual, I can recall the information that I was thinking about and exploring. Next, it promotes non-linear thinking, like we discussed about many other times. It promotes non-linear thinking, which if you're a creative person or you're creating a new business idea or any type of ideation at all, just the fact that you're working in this non-linear manner, and you can come back to this later and add something to this part and come over here and say, oh, you know what, this is actually connected to this non-linear form of thinking that it promotes is really, really beneficial to any form of creative thinking. Okay, now how do we actually go about mind mapping? First, you're going to have the main idea in the middle, and then from there, you're going to have different ideas that branch out from it. We want to go from general to specific. So the most general idea that encapsulates everything is going to be in the middle, and then you get a little more specific as you go out, the sub-main ideas, and then it gets more and more specific and smaller in your writing and the size of the branches as you move out and radiate out from the middle. Now, what's the structure of it? We'll draw a square around the middle. That's how I like to begin with my mind maps. Or draw a picture in the middle of what you're going to be discussing or taking notes on. And then we want to create curving lines that start big and get smaller as more ideas get added on to the mind map. And with these curving lines, we want to underline each of the new ideas, each of the new words. So we start off with one word, then we branch out and let's say we're talking about mind maps with this. I'll have one branch that says why mind maps, and then I'm going to put why. That's a sub branch. Then I'm going to put out the different ideas that we could talk about for why it's beneficial. It replicates the way the brain naturally works. Okay, that's one. And with each of these sub ideas, we want to make sure that we're only using one word per branch, sometimes two words, but if you can, try to stick to one word for each branch. Next, we want to utilize variety. So we want to utilize color if we can. At least two colors. Just the more ways we can personalize it and use different forms of note-taking and ideation, the better it's going to stick into your head, the more parts of your brain that are going to be activated and in connection with each other, and out of nowhere, you're in this flow state that everything you write down is retained much more deeply than normal note-taking, and also it just promotes these creative ideas that maybe you weren't expecting, something off of a really far branch. Is this an idea that's, oh, you know what? That's actually really interesting to me, and I wouldn't have got there if I didn't go about it by mind mapping. So variety is key. Color, we can use drawings, we can use symbols, and we can use arrows that interconnect things. Using different forms of variety makes it a very physical and fun experience that leads to better ideas. Okay, next, how do we go about grouping? So we want to make sure that each of the sections, each of the branches is as condensed as possible. So we want to find a word, a concept that can group everything together and try to have a section of branches, a web of branches connected that all underline, that all go under one group. So you're going to have multiple different subgroups, and you want to really think, instead of just writing everything that you hear if you're taking notes using this method, you want to wait, okay, what is a main idea? Okay, let me write that main idea. Now, what are things underneath this section? So really being intentional with the keywords that you choose is key to really creating a clean mind map that you're able to continue to build off of and understand later. You want to make sure everything's relational. So again, ideas of the same subject together. If we have ideas that come up in different branches and different groups, we can draw arrows that connect them, and we can see, okay, this is actually connected to here, and find random connections. And yeah, recurring ideas. Any recurring ideas that we see, we want to make sure that we're grouping them together and showing the relationships between them. And to remember is this is just a tool. It's not going to completely replace any note-taking systems that you have, but it is a phenomenal tool that I would highly recommend using often. But you can use annotations. You can create symbols that say, okay, on this separate page, I go more into depth about this idea. It's one tool that allows you to branch and find and think in systems and abstractions and concepts, and it's been extremely helpful for me.